Professor Fenimore Barrowman, and welcome to Fenimore Barrowman Presents Fun with Plagues. Come along with me as we dive into the fascinating world of microbes, or as my producer, me, likes to say, all plagues, all the time. Each show we will be examining the great plagues of yore as well as the new plagues of the 21st century. From the Black Death to the Great Plague of London, from SARS to MERS and AIDS and Ebola, we'll look at what made these pandemics so fascinating, not to mention deadly and easy to pronounce. And along the way, we'll throw in a few fun facts. And stick around, disease aficionados. Later in today's show, I've got a special guest coming in. You won't want to miss that. Now, I thought I'd start with one of the most famous diseases in all of history. That's right, the Plague of Justinian. It was named after the Emperor Justinian, who ruled the Roman Empire at the time. Time for a fun fact. The plague was caused by a bacteria named Yersinia pestis. I once dated a girl in grad school named Yersinia Alexander. But I digress. The disease originated in China and then moved on to Egypt and then to Europe around 540 A.D. The bacteria was carried by fleas on rats that hitched a ride on those trade ships carrying wheat and stuff. Well, the plague came at a bad time for poor old Justinian. He was in the midst of rebuilding his empire after decades of decline in a sort of make the Roman Empire great again campaign. And when the plague arrived in Constantinople in 541 AD, it put the kibosh to his plans. Not just his plans, it put the kibosh to a whole lot of people too. It almost put the kibosh to Justinian himself, but he managed to survive his infection and went on to rule for another 23 years or so. Now, to be fair to Justinian, he may have been a victim of fake news. Much of what's known about the plague was written by a 6th century historian named Procopius. Procopius was no fan of Justinian. In fact, he blamed him for the pandemic, writing that he was either the devil himself or else he was being punished by God for his evil ways. Where have we heard that before? Some modern researchers have even argued that the death toll wasn't that bad. It was bad, just not that bad. Here's another fun fact. The residents of Constantinople pinned their names to their coats when they went outside so they could be identified if they fell ill and died away from home. So the plague went on for a couple more years before it eventually subsided, but that wasn't the last we'd hear of Yersinia P. It continued flaring up for centuries afterwards, especially in the 14th century, when it resulted in the pandemic known as the Black Death. Now that was a bad one. But we have to leave that for another show because it's time to introduce our special guest. He is one of the giants of microbiology, a virologist who developed the vaccine that saved millions from the scourge of polio. He's also a member of the Polio Hall of Fame. Please say hello to Dr. Jonas Salk. Dr. Salk, welcome to Fun with Plagues. Where am I? You're on Fun with Plagues, Dr. Salk. Fun with Plagues. Dr. Salk? Dr. Salk, are you all right? Forgive me. I am 115 years old, you know? You're also dead. but we won't go there. Dr. Salk, I thought we'd play a little game I like to call Whose Plague Is It Anyway? A game? Plagues. Can't be any worse than being dead, I suppose. Okay, so here's how we play the game. I'll tell you something about a pandemic, and you tell me whether it happened in 1918 during the Spanish flu or in 2020 during the COVID-19 pandemic. Are you ready? Who are you? I'm Professor Barrowman, Dr. Salk, Fenimore Barrowman, and we're about to play Whose Plague Is It Anyway? Here we go. The following products were thought to be cures or treatments for the plague. Which plague are we referring to? Nano silver liquid. 2020. Horlicks malted milk. 1918. Phenocamethol oil. 1918. Methylene blue tablets. 2020. Hydroxychloroquine. 2020. Cascara quinine bromide. 1918. Goods peptomagnin. 1918. Bleach. 2020. Onions. 1918. Pineapple. 2020. Pizza? Pizza's not a cure for anything. I know. I was wondering if you wanted some pizza. These questions are making me hungry. Very funny. Moving on to the multiple choice round. The Spanish flu originated in A. Spain, B. Mexico, C. the United States, D. none of the above. D. none of the above. That's incorrect, Dr. Salk. The correct answer is C. The pandemic is believed to have started at a military base in Fort Riley, Kansas. It was then carried by soldiers to Europe, where it spread to many nations fighting in World War I. Now, here's the irony. Spain had opted to stay out of the war, so its newspapers weren't subject to the same kinds of censorship that the other countries had, such as not reporting on the pandemic. So when the Spanish newspapers started reporting about it, well, they just assumed it must have started in Spain, so they called it the Spanish flu. Makes you wonder if President Trump would have called it the American flu, doesn't it? Dr. Salk? Oh dear. Dr. Salk seems to have gone back to being dead. Well, maybe you can have too much fun. Well, it was a blast while he was here, wasn't it? Come back for our next show when we forage for the fun and find the fascinating on Fun with Plagues. Well, I guess I don't need to keep this mask on anymore.